loved by millions for his iconic roles on stage and screen, including the portrayal, of course, of Agatha Christie's famous detective Poirot.
And now David Suchet is giving his fans the chance to get to know the actor behind those characters as he celebrates his extraordinary 50-year career with a new show.
And he joins us now from his home to tell us all about it. Good morning, David.
Good morning,
Thank you so
David.
much for joining us.
Morning. Good morning.
So you're embarking on a new part of the tour. You've been on tour, but now you're at the Harold Pinter for the residency in the West End until the 22nd. What can people expect from the show?
Well, just briefly, we've been all around the country in 23 venues, and as you say, we're now at the Pinter Theatre until January the 22nd. And basically, it's coming to spend an evening with me. There are two halves to the show. The first half is really about my early life, my family, my career, how I started getting into drama school, into rep, ultimately into the Royal Shakespeare Theatre Company, and then bagging some wonderful roles on television, and including, of course, the wonderful Hercule Poirot, which is one of the greatest gifts that's ever been offered to me. And in the second part, we change the format a little bit, and I go into a little Shakespeare workshop. I talk about verse, I talk about language, I talk about how I approach roles as a character actor. I do some acting myself. I demonstrate some speeches, and I involve the audience. They join in a little bit and have great fun in the evening. And then we concentrate on how I developed the whole role of Poirot that has become, strangely and very excitingly for me, rather iconic in my lifetime.
Oh, what a treat. That sounds amazing. Did you always want to be an actor, David?
No, actually, it's an interesting question. I wanted originally to be a doctor. My father was a surgeon, and then I realised I didn't really have the science knowledge and capability to become that. And then I wanted to be a documentary film cameraman.
Oh, wow.
And that didn't work. That was a sort of catch-22 situation. You couldn't get a job without a union card, and you couldn't get a union card unless you had a job. So that didn't work for me. And then I was in the National Youth Theatre at the time, and I was at the Royal Court Theatre, and something happened that made me want to spend the rest of my life in that wonderful atmosphere, which I explained.
Is that something that we can find out now, or do we have to go to the show to find out what that something was?
Oh, I'd love you to book a ticket.
and David, it's on at the Harold Pinter Theatre, which is a beautiful, it's quite an intimate theatre in London. But that has special resonance for you as well, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And it used to be called the Comedy Theatre. And now, of course, it's named after the wonderful playwright Harold Pinter. But I went there in 1987 for my very first ever West End role. I was playing in a play by Tom Kempinski called Separation. And to come back there now, after, since 1987, and, you know, these so many years, is such a wonderful experience for me. And I was on stage last night for the first time with an audience, all masked, and having the most wonderful evening with everybody who'd taken the trouble and had the courage to come back to the theatre. And this is what this show is about. I'm doing this show mainly to welcome back and encourage people back to their beloved theatres, because it's been a terrible time and people have missed coming to the theatre. And I want to welcome them back to have an evening with me, not in a serious play, but a fun evening, having time together and having a wonderful evening in the theatre.
Now, David, you've played Poirot for 25 years, which I just couldn't believe. And you've actually covered every single Agatha Christie book. And I was wondering, if you was ever offered a movie, would you take it, David?
Oh, that's a wonderful question again. I've often been asked this question, and I have to say, I don't know because of my age whether I might be too old now, but if the silver screen did come along, I'd be,
I'd love it.
Well, let's say I'd be very tempted.
Yeah. Because you originally it was only a 6-month gig for you, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It was a 6-month offer of 10 Poirot short stories. And we filmed those in 1988. And at the end of that, that was the end of my contract. And they had an option on me for 2 more summers, and after that I thought I was going to finish. And in fact, I never had, a lot of people are very surprised about this, I never ever had a running contract all over those 25 years. After every year, I was out of work.
You didn't know whether you were going to come back or not?
No, I never knew whether I was going to come back. It all depended on audience figures and advertising and money and everything else. And I was just waiting to hear whether I could come back. Now, in retrospect, although that seemed very difficult at the time, in retrospect, I'm very grateful for it because it allowed me to go into the theatre and play many wonderful roles, all in America and here in England, and to tour the country and to be in the West End, playing iconic roles in the theatre, which I probably wouldn't have been able to on a 25-year contract on television. So in retrospect, I'm very grateful that I had those gaps.
And he's such an iconic role, isn't he, Poirot? And obviously you followed just a few years after Peter Ustinov, and who, you know, growing up, he was the one we always remember, and yet you completely made this character your own. I mean, did you have trepidation when you took the gig to start with?
Yes, I had enormous trepidation, of course, because it's so iconic. But in a sense, being a classical actor and spending, 13 years with the Royal Shakespeare Theatre, I've always been taking over roles. So taking over a role wasn't the problem. It was the nature of the role. And when I started reading the stories, I found myself introduced to a little man that I'd never seen played before on screen. So I made the decision not to do anything else but play the role as Dame Agatha Christie wrote him. Mm-hmm. And that's basically all I did. But it seemed to have caught the imaginations of millions and millions of people, but especially, I think, those who read the books. Because what I wanted to do was to be able to be that little man that they were reading about, so we could all be in touch with each other in a sort of magical way.
And you really did become him. What was so interesting was when I read that you actually, when you did voiceovers, or is it ADR?
ADR, yeah.
ADR, when you put your voice onto the film.
Dialogue recording.
Like, you literally put a moustache on, is that right?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And in fact, very few people know this. I had to go to the dubbing studio with a moustache because I don't know what it was. When I put that moustache on, and for everybody listening, it was a false moustache. But when I put it on, it changed my voice. It sort of restricted my top lip, without which I couldn't really do the accent as I would match absolutely identically the film that I was trying to dub.
That's unbelievable.
David, it's clear that you love theatre so much. Is there a role that you haven't played that you'd still love to play in your career, a Lear or something like that?
Well, I've often been. Well, in fact, last year I was offered Lear by 4 different companies. I'm not going to do Lear at the moment. I'm never going to say never. And I don't really know what parts there are available for me at the moment. I'm really taking a lot of time out doing this sort of show, doing more television and film, and spending much more time with my family now that I've reached a certain age.
Good for you.
I'm not sure if I'm ready for a long West End run anymore. Yeah. But maybe a short run somewhere, doing some interesting roles.
And before we let you go, you were knighted for your services to drama and charity in 2020. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
But the ceremony hasn't happened yet.
Well, well, it was going to happen. It was going to happen 2 weeks ago, but I tested positive for COVID, so I couldn't go.
Have you got another date? Have you got another date?
The timing. But I've got a new date, and it's happening very soon. And I must say, I'm very humbled and terribly excited.
Congratulations.
Well,
thank you.
Sir David Suchet, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, David. Tickets for David's show, Poirot and More, retrospective, are available now. It's on to the 22nd of January.